Well, welcome to Ask a Responsive Fundraiser, where we take your questions to a fundraising expert so that you can grow generosity. Today, we're taking your questions to Kyle Cartwright. Kyle is the Interim Executive Director and Director of Development at Civic Nebraska, a nonprofit advancing voter rights, civic health, and youth leadership. He helps nonprofits, businesses, and donors build thriving communities through fundraising, philanthropy, and social impact strategies. A Nebraska native, Kyle has held leadership roles in philanthropy, arts, and culture, and serves as a saxophonist in the Nebraska Army National Guard's 43rd Army Band. Kyle, thank you so much for coming on, taking some time to answer questions today.
Absolutely. Pleased to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to jump in. The first question is this. Donor fatigue only seems to be increasing, and we're worried about keeping our most loyal supporters engaged. So, what are some fresh ways that we can create meaningful connections with our donors?
Yeah. Especially after a crazy, contentious election season. I know a lot of people have been, emotionally taxed a little bit and certainly financially stretched with their involvement and things like that. But, what I have found to be some of the most effective ways to keep folks from feeling a sense of fatigue is knowing that others continue to join them. And so finding, best way I've found is to show that their support is joined by others and, building new donors and even potentially thinking about how, your sort of loyal core base of supporters can participate in like a match or something like that to inspire and encourage others to give, and then report back to them on the results of that and how many new donors we've generated. At Civic Nebraska, we've been really blessed to have a core of foundation supporters, and then a handful of individual supporters. So foundation, I mean like private foundation, but that core of individuals has been pretty low over the history. We're only about 16 years old as an organization, and so sort of my charge is coming in as development director and now interim executive director has been to grow that base, and finding a lot of those different strategies has been really rewarding, and I think galvanizing or sort of re-inspiring, re-engaging for some of the folks who we can just always rely on, but we don't want to take for granted because it's a slippery slope. And and also, by the way, if you're not asking how folks are feeling about their relationship with you and their engagement, you might be surprised, and probably not in a good way. So yeah, continuing to ask and engage in new and fresh ways. So yeah, a lot of ideas around that. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
like I said, sort of finding ways to bring others to the table and show that to your sort of core base. Um, Being really thoughtful about stewardship. I mean, I know it's trite, and we all talk about storytelling and stewardship and speaking to donors how they want to be spoken to. Um, but I just think it just bears mentioning again and again and again. Handwritten notes, a phone call here and there, talking to your program teams, finding those stories that really are meaningful and moving for a general audience, but certainly on a more personal level for your core base of supporters that have been there for you reliably. So.
Yeah, I think that speaks to how important it is, right? To really listen and understand and connect with your donors in particular, to know them. That's such an important point. All right, second question is this. Many of our donors are older, and we're concerned about growing the next generation of our donor base. How can we adjust our strategies to connect with younger donors? And is it possible to do this while still resonating with our current base?
Yeah, and by the way, so this is not shameless for me, but certainly for the podcast. I'm a big proponent, big lover of the responsive framework, and it really, I think, reinforced for me as I sort of we're a virtuous client at Civic Nebraska. I've in my consulting practice, I've worked with other nonprofits and really done the due diligence, and the way that you all frame this idea of the responsive framework and sort of the listen, learn, respond. I think this question really cuts right to the heart of that, is recognizing that our donors are not a monolith, and finding the ways to
Mm.
um, do the research. There's a lot of tools out there to understand what's the age demographic of your current base of support, and maybe who's like just dipping their toe in the water, signing up for the email list or liking your post on social or what have you. Really try to understand some of those demographics and do some research
Yeah.
as to like where they congregate, how they engage, what's particularly motivating to them. When we think about a young audience, the what I have found, or sort of, there's tons of research out there. I'm not an expert. I'm in my mid 30s, so sort of like key millennial, core millennial, right? But understanding, like values are what guide, I think, the next generations, as opposed to, and it's not to say this is better or worse, it's just different. I think, and I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Somebody feel free to push back, but you know, as opposed to like what and how you do what you do. And taking sort of at face value, like we want to be appealed to, and future generations, sort of joining this philanthropic space, want to be gauged into, on the basis of the why and the value set, really expressing that
Mhm.
vision. And so these are not new things. It's not changing your mission. It's not changing your message all that much. Even it's just, I think, a reframing. So and
Yeah.
knowing the media, or the medium rather, in which to sort of broadcast these messages. So yeah, understanding
Yeah.
the sort of, we're oversimplifying a little bit here, but the sort of two, right? We've got our older audience and our younger audience, and really understanding, how and where to reach them.
No, that's super helpful, and I think even regardless of whether it's a younger generation, older generation, I think that advice is so wise for your donors in general. Like understand them. That's such an important piece that then can really guide everything else when it comes to the different outreach and how you're connecting with them.
Yeah, and I'd just
All right,
say,
number three,
well,
as an
if I
oh
can
yeah,
add
go
just
ahead.
a little bit, yeah, from a tactical standpoint, is, for instance, what as a key example of like creating some accessibility to the organization as well. Like there's many ways to engage, right? You can add your voice, you can add your network, you can, attend an event. But if donorship and sort of, thinking of the pipeline of folks' involvement and affinity, and donorship being, a key milestone in that development process, is if your giving form is starting at $100 or even $50, you're probably not signaling that like this organization's for you. And so, finding a way
Mm,
to, again, if you can, to the degree you can, segmenting and sort of having responsive forms in a way that, maybe you're starting at $5 a month, or even just $10 outright. Dip your toe in the water, get in the system. We'll start sending you all the good love and treating you, even
yeah,
better, as, or sort of giving you more attention because you've sort of, moved into this space as a core supporter for the work we're doing. So, but you have to have that
yeah,
doorway
that's
in.
very good. All right, number three, it says, as an executive director, I often feel isolated in making big decisions, especially during uncertain or difficult times. So, how can I build a stronger support network and involve my board in more strategic discussions?
Yeah, I had a lot of thoughts around this one, so I hope you'll bear with me as my notes are a little a little bit all over the place here. But, you know, I th-
Of
obviously,
course.
without more context, it's hard to really understand. And every organization is so different from the standpoint of, I want to talk about like senior leadership and how you can maybe expand some of that sphere of influence. But every organization is different from, how the executive director is supported both by a board and by a senior leadership. I've served as executive director for an organization with one and a half full-time employees, including myself, and a board of, I think, 13 or 14. And now I'm at an organization with 30 full-time staff, 70 part-time staff, and a board of seven. So very nimble,
Yeah.
on the board side, but pretty robust. And so we've got a whole leadership structure. And I've only been in this role, by the way, just for some context, since August. So, it'll be coming up on 6 months or so here soon. Um, and what I've really learned is, I think there's a fallacy that I have helped to perpetuate, by the way, that it's lonely at the top. And I think it's lonely because we as leaders and
Mm,
sort of culturally, societally, make it seem like in leadership we have to have all the answers, or we're going to be discovered, we're going to be figured out. or we're fearful
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
sharing some of the challenges we're facing and really bringing into a generative space with our board chair or our senior staff who, look to us, but also, I really want to challenge that notion in the sense that we should look to them because the sort of the collective brain trust of that space is far wiser than we as leaders, and so it's really reinforced with me. This experience of having really effective people around me who know their job, know the community they serve like the back of their hand, and me being relatively
Yeah.
new and just sort of tap for the role for some prior management and sort of organizational leadership skill, but I don't have all the answers in sort of the programmatic space, and so sort of forced me into a sense of humility that I've always liked to say that I
Yeah.
operate from, but it's really revealed to me how true. This notion is that relying on the people around you is really healthy. It's really it's also empowering and galvanizing for the people around you to feel a sense
Yep.
of agency and empowerment over the decisions. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I've got a lot
Y-
of thoughts here, um, but yeah, maybe I'll
Yeah.
I'll pause there for a second.
Yeah. No, I think that's so helpful. And honestly, I think that people are really want to follow leadership like that and follow humble leaders who can say, "Hey, I don't have all the answers and this is why you're on the team is cuz I want you to help us figure out where we're going." I think that could be really attractive to people as well. And so it's actually the opposite, right? The fear is people aren't going to believe in me and follow this leadership if I don't have the answers. I think the opposite is true. Actually, people are more bought in and excited about being a part of the mission.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree. So yeah, so I just, when we talked about feeling isolated as leaders, not having the context and not making absolutely no judgments here, but it's just challenging. Why are we feeling isolated, and are there ways that we can sort of expand that sphere of influence in a way that helps us feel sort of yeah, joined in the challenges that maybe we're making. There's also acknowledgement like some things should not be shared. So yeah, I recognize that, and certainly there's mechanisms for addressing that. And there's mentorship, peer networks, finding folks that you can rely on, and maybe who have a trust and confidentiality, and that
Yeah.
ability to impart some information that helps you sort of process through, but who is relatively disinterested in sort of the organization itself or others around it. So um, and I'll be honest,
Yeah.
if you don't have that relationship with your board chair, because this is sort of the illusion I think between that what I'm trying to get across here is if you don't have that sort of mentee mentor relationship with your board chair. And by the way, those aren't mutually exclusive, right? Like you can serve in one or both roles with a given person. Um,
Yeah.
if you don't have that with your board chair, I think it's really worth asking. Have you cultivated the skill set, the understanding, the leadership of that board chair well enough? Do you have the right person on the bus in that sense too? Because your best advocate
Yeah.
for getting engagement from the board, or I guess the best person to engage the board is not executive director, it is the board chair. And so having them sort of in the cockpit with you, so that you all are marching in the same
Yeah.
direction, charging in the same direction is vitally, vitally important.
That's super helpful. And yeah, just so appreciate you sharing your wisdom and experience, but also, I know that you're kind of in it as well. And so you can share as somebody sitting in the seat, what you're working through, walking through. And so, Kyle, we really appreciate you taking the time today and sharing with us.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, certainly welcome anybody reach out. I always love sort of having that one-on-one conversation with folks too. So, yeah.